diner off Route 7, past the quarry and the pans. The coffee tastes of yesterday, and the clock forgot the time. The waitress knows my first name, though I rarely say a word. She fills my cup and leaves me be, like silence ought to be heard. Outside the trucks keep rolling, their headlights cutting through the haze. I watch them disappear westward and think about my younger days, back when my hands were quicker and my promises came cheap. Before life taught me certain debts are too heavy not to keep. The night leaned against the window like an old friend dressed in black, and every mile behind me seemed unwilling to turn back. I've carried more than luggage, I've carried years I couldn't hide, 1,000 storms behind these eyes, 1,000 roads inside. Still when the darkness calls my number and the cold creeps through my bones, I find a way to keep on walking, even when I'm walking alone. There was a boxer named Raymond who trained down on Willow Street, a broken nose, worn leather gloves, and scars beneath his feet. He once told me, son, listen, the world ain't fair or kind, but don't let bitterness move in and rent a room inside. I laughed back then and brushed it off like young men often do. Now I hear those words at midnight when the sky turns iron blue. Some lessons take a lifetime before they settle in your chest, like knowing strength ain't winning, it's surviving what comes next. The jukebox played an old blues tune, soft and low and warm, the kind of song that understands a man can break and still go on. I've carried more than luggage, I've carried years I couldn't hide, 1,000 storms behind these eyes, 1,000 roads inside. Still when the darkness calls my number and the cold creeps through my bones, I find a way to keep on walking, even when I'm walking alone. The rain arrived near morning, tapping softly on the glass, and every drop seemed to whisper, nothing broken ever lasts. I thought about my father and the weight he never showed, how he stood against hard seasons without laying down his load. Maybe courage isn't loudness, takes a man remaining kind after everything he's lost. I've carried more than luggage. I've carried memories like stone. Watch good people leave too early and learn to stand alone. Yet somewhere beyond the sorrow, beyond the nights that never smile, there remains a steady heartbeat, untamed, unbent, and wild. So let the wind keep blowing, let the years take what they will. There are some things they cannot touch and never will. The sun began to gather along the edge of the plain. I left a few old burdens somewhere beside the rain, then headed toward the horizon with no grand plan to fulfill, just a man and one more stretch of road to travel still.
There's a corner bar on Mercer Street, still wearing the same old sign. The paint has cracked, the neon hums, but it survives like I survive. I slipped inside near closing time, rain dripping from my coat. The bartender gave a quiet nod and slid a glass before I spoke. The stool beside me sat empty, at least to everyone else. But I've spent enough years with memories to recognize them by myself. Some men leave through the front door, some leave without a sound, yet they keep showing up at midnight whenever whiskey comes around. The jukebox breathed in old slow blues, low as a winter wind, and every note carried a face I haven't seen again. So here's to the ghosts I owe a drink, the ones who helped me stand, the ones who carried pieces of me I never got back again. To the lost, the gone, the distant, to the names time couldn't erase, I raise this glass to the shadows still living in this place. There was a man named Charlie Evans, worked the railroad 30 years. Hands like iron, laugh like thunder, never bowed to fear. One November, cancer found him. By spring, he was gone, but I still hear him cursing card games whenever the night gets long. Then there was Anna from the valley, blue eyes and restless dreams. She taught me that love ain't on a ship, it's softer than it seems. I was too proud to tell her what she meant before she left. Now her memory walks beside me like a beautiful regret. Outside, the rain kept falling, tracing rivers down the glass, like old stories finding pathways back into the past. So here's to the ghosts I owe a drink, the ones who helped me stand, the ones who carried pieces of me I never got back again. To the lost, the gone, the distant, to the names time couldn't erase, I raise this glass to the shadows still living in this place. A young man sat across the room, head hanging toward the floor. The look in his eyes told me I'd worn that look before. I wanted to tell him heartache passes, that grief eventually learns to rest, that a man ain't measured by his losses, but by what survives the test. Yet wisdom has a funny habit, it arrives when storms are through. The lessons we most need in life usually arrive too late for you. So here's to the ghosts I owe a drink, the ones who shaped my soul, the ones who left their fingerprints on roads I'll always know. The years may steal the voices, the faces may grow dim, but as long as this heart remembers, a part of them remains within. So here's to the ghosts I owe a drink, tonight and every year, not because I'm trapped behind them, but because they brought me here. Last call echoed through the tavern chairs, were turned upon the floor. The rain had finally stopped falling beyond the old front door. I stepped into the quiet darkness, the city washed and clean, and for a moment, walking alone, I wasn't lonely, not with all those memories walking beside me.
The station clock was losing minutes, just like it had for years. A lonely bulb above the platform burned through the drifting haze.
I stood beneath that tide light with my hands deep in my coat, watching freight cars slide through darkness like memories I never wrote. There was a time I knew the future, or at least I thought I did, back when every road looked open and every wound stayed hid. Now the faces come in fragments, a laugh, a voice, a passing glance, little pieces of a lifetime scattered by circumstance. The wind came down from Miller Ridge, cold enough to sting. Funny how the heart remembers the smallest of everything. I've carried fire through the rain and silence through the storm, held together broken pieces when the world changed form. The years have taken plenty, Lord, they've taken more than their share, but there's still something standing tall inside the smoking air. And though the night grows heavier, I remain exactly where I've been, a man still walking forward with a stubborn soul within. There was a house beside the river where my mother used to sing. The curtains danced in summer winds, and hope felt like a simple thing. My father worked the timber yards, his back bent by the load. He taught me that a man's true measure is found upon the harder roads. I didn't understand him then. Youth rarely understands. It takes a few hard winners to appreciate steady hands. The house is gone now, long replaced. The river still remains, flowing past forgotten stories and carrying away names. The moon hung low above the water, silver on the tide, and every lesson life had taught me seemed gathered there tonight. I've carried fire through the rain and silence through the storm, held together broken pieces when the world changed form. The years have taken plenty, Lord, they've taken more than their share, but there's still something standing tall inside the smoking air. And though the night grows heavier, I remain exactly where I've been, a man still walking forward with a stubborn soul within. I met an old friend in a graveyard one autumn afternoon, not in flesh but in remembrance, beneath a fading moon. We used to dream of bigger cities, of fortunes yet to find. Funny how the richest things are often left behind. The bells from St. Matthew's carried across the sleeping fields, and for the first time in a long while, I had no need to heal, only to remember, only to forgive, only to be grateful for the years I got to live. I've carried fire through the rain and stood
chapters closed their doors and still walked on again. The road may claim my footprints, the wind may steal my name, but there's a light no stone can touch, and a heart no loss can tame. So let tomorrow find me beneath whatever sky it's in. I'll face it like I faced them all, with these scars and the strength they left within. The freight train vanished eastward, its whistle fading slow. The station settled back to silence as the midnight shadows grew. I turned my collar to the wind and stepped into the dark, carrying every memory, but no longer letting them carry me, carry me, carry me.
The old sawmill stands abandoned at the edge of Hollow Creek. Windows broken by the weather, walls too tired to speak. I park beside the loading dock where my father worked his years. The wind moves through the empty beams like a hymn made out of tears. There was a time I knew these roads better than the lines upon my hand. Every fence post, every gravel turn, every acre of this land. Now the town feels like a photograph left too long beneath the sun. The faces faded one by one until only shadows lingered on. The evening settled slowly, copper skies above the pines, and every mile behind me seems stitched into my mind. I've worn the weight of hard seasons, felt the cold when hope ran thin. But a man ain't measured by his losses, he's measured by what remains within. The wind can carry dust forever, the rain can rust the strongest chain, yet something still stands upright after every storm and pain. There was a woman named Rebecca, a laugh that could soften stone. She could fill a room with sunlight and make any place feel home. I promised her a better future, a house beyond the county line. But youth spends dreams like a loose change and assumes there's always time. By the time I learned the difference between wanting and holding near, the train had already left the carried away the years. Some nights I still remember the perfume on her coat. Not enough to break me now, just enough to keep the memory close. The first stars climb the darkness like lanterns in the sky. Somewhere an old dog barked as another day went by. I've worn the weight of hard seasons, felt the cold when hope ran thin. But a man ain't measured by his losses, he's measured by what remains within. The wind can carry dust forever, the rain can rust the strongest chain, yet something still stands upright after every storm and pain. An old man sat outside the church, whittling cedar by the gate. He said, "Son, the strongest oak was once a sapling bent by fate." Then he smiled and kept on carving, like he'd handed me a key, the kind of wisdom life reveals only after decades teach. That's when I understood strength isn't a clenched fist raised, it's carrying your scars with honor and refusing to live afraid. I've worn the weight of hard seasons, watched good things slip away. Still these hands know honest labor, and this heart still greets the day. The years can test a man's foundation and leave a few cracks behind, but they cannot steal the fire that survives inside his mind. No, they cannot steal the fire that survives inside his mind. The moon rose over Hollow Creek, silver on the weathered wood. I took one last look around at everything that once had stood, then turned toward the highway where the darkness met the dawn. A little older, a little wiser, still moving on. Still moving on. I left the county fairgrounds long after the crowds were gone. The Ferris wheel stood motionless, its lights already withdrawn. The ticket booths were empty, paper cups rolled through the breeze. A lonely song from somewhere distant floated softly through the trees. My boots were soaked from walking roads I didn't need to take, Funny how a man keeps moving when his heart begins to ache. There was a photograph beside me on the passenger seat all night. The woman smiling at the camera, caught forever in the light. The clouds hung low above the fields, heavy as old regrets. Some things leave your hands behind, but never truly leave your chest. I've carried sorrow like a suitcase across towns that barely knew my name. I watched the world keep turning while I stood out in the rain. But there's a fire beneath the damage, a stubborn ember in the cold. And every mile I've traveled has left my spirit harder to fold. There was an old mechanic named Walter down on Pine. His hands could bring dead engines back, one part at a time. He once told me in winter, while snow gathered on the door, son, every broken thing can teach you what it was built for. I didn't think much of it then. I was young and hard to reach. Now those words come back like church bells every time life tries to teach. The years have taken people, they've taken places too. But somehow they leave lessons hidden in the things you lose. The freight train crossed the valley, its whistle long and low, like a voice from another lifetime calling through the dark below. I've carried sorrow like a suitcase across towns that barely knew my name. I've watched the world keep turning while I stood out in the rain. But there's a fire beneath the damage, a stubborn ember in the cold. And every mile I've traveled has left my spirit harder to fold. Near dawn I stopped beside a river where the water met the stone, the kind of place that makes a man feel both small and not alone. I thought about the roads behind me, the ones I'd crossed and survived, and all the times I thought I was finished, yet somehow stayed alive. Maybe courage isn't glory, maybe it isn't being strong, maybe it's simply standing up again after carrying hurt so long. I've carried sorrow like a suitcase and memories heavier than steel. I've buried dreams beneath the seasons, yet never lost what's real. The wind can shake the branches, the years can bend the pine, but there's something deeper rooted than the troubles left behind. And when the storm is spoken and the night has had its say, the man still rises and walks on, with rain upon his way. Morning touched the riverbank, turning silver into gold. I tightened up my jacket against the lingering cold, and headed toward the highway where another day began. Not searching for answers, just walking forward like a man. The tavern sits on River Street, same brick walls, same worn-out floor. The owner died 3 winters back, but his son still tends the door. I took my place beside the window, where the lamp burned soft and low. Outside, the river carried moonlight to places I'll never know. Across the room stood empty chairs, quiet as forgotten prayers. Once they held the men I knew, now they only hold the air. Tom would laugh at every story, Frank would argue every game. Now the room still speaks their language, but nobody answers when it calls their names. The night settled over the rooftops, slow as smoke from a fire, and every shadow seemed to carry a face I still admire. The years take more than people, they take pieces of your soul. A voice across the table, a hand you used to hold. Still I raise my head each morning, though some roads disappear. For a man learns how to carry the weight of empty chairs. There was a woman named Caroline who could calm the hardest storm. She had a way of looking at me that made broken things feel warm. We shared a porch one summer, watched lightning cross the plains, spoke about the lives we'd built beyond the coming rains. But life don't always ask permission before it changes course. Sometimes love gets swept away by a stronger unseen force. I still pass her old neighborhood when business takes me there, and every street light after sunset feels like a memory in the air. The church bell echoed through downtown, soft across the dark, like a reminder that some stories never truly fall apart. The years take more than people, they take pieces of your soul. A voice across the table, a outside and walk beside the river wall. The city lights danced on the water like ghosts attending a final call. I thought about my father and the burdens that he bore, how he never asked life to be easy, only worth fighting for. That's the thing about strong men, most never speak of pain. They simply keep showing up through sunshine and through rain. The years take more than people, they leave silence in their place. Photographs upon a mantle, lines upon a weathered face. Yet there's something stronger than sorrow, something stronger than despair. It's the stubborn heart that keeps beating despite the empty chairs. Yes, there's something stronger than sorrow, something stronger than despair. It's the stubborn heart that keeps beating despite the empty chairs. The river kept moving southward, the stars hung over town. I buttoned up my old brown coat as the temperature dropped down. Then I walked into the darkness, not defeated, not prepared, just another man still standing, carrying what wasn't there. Man made a weather, the grain elevator stood against the sky, tall as a memory worn by time. Its shadow stretched across the fields like an old hand drawing a line. I parked my truck beside the fence and listened to the prairie breathe, the kind of silence country roads keep for the broken and the relieved. There was a season I chased horizons, thinking distance could make me new. But every road carried the same man, just under a different view. The years have a way of sanding edges, like rivers shaping stone. One day you wake and realize you're no longer running from home. A hawk drifted above the wheat fields, turning circles in the blue. And something about that lonely flight felt painfully true. I've stood through hard December winds and summer's dry as bone. I've watched good things leave my life and learned to stand alone. The rain may fall, the frost may come, the storm may bend the trees, but there are things was an old barber on Main Street who cut my hair for 20 years. He knew every family in the county, every triumph, every tear. He once said, "Son, pay attention. The world changes every day. The secret isn't staying young. It's not letting kindness fade." I carried that line for decades, through heartbreak and through doubt. Funny how the smallest wisdom ends up helping the most. The shop is gone now, boarded over. The striped pole no longer turns, but some voices never truly leave. Some lessons continue to burn. The sun slipped low behind the barns, painting gold across the land, like a final quiet blessing upon everything that stands. I've stood through hard December winds and summers dry as bone. I watched good things leave my life and learn to stand alone. The rain may fall, the frost may come, the storm may bend the trees, but there are things a man becomes when he survives these seas. Near dusk I found an old churchyard at the edge of Miller Creek. Names carved deep into the granite, stories no longer speak. I walked among those silent markers and felt something settle inside. Not sadness, not regret, just gratitude for the ride. Because every scar tells a chapter, every loss leaves something behind, and every hard-earned mile adds shape to the landscape of a life. I've stood through hard December winds and nights that seemed endless and cold. Yet there's a flame beneath these ribs that refuses to grow old. The world may change around me, the years may blur my name, but I'll meet tomorrow standing the same way I met the rain. When my journey reaches twilight and the final curtain falls, let it be said, I stayed upright through it all. The evening settled on the prairie, soft amber fading into gray. I climbed back into the driver's seat as daylight slipped away. The road stretched west before me, quiet beneath the sky. And for once, I wasn't looking back. I was simply watching the horizon arrive.